So about 2 years ago, I was working a regular job and making decent money, and I managed to build a decent stack in the stock market. Now most of it was in the S&P 500, but I also started toying around with smaller caps. And this really gave me a taste of what kind of rewards I could be reaping if I started making riskier plays. So I started looking around on the internet for what kind of alternative investments I could make, and eventually I stumbled upon peer-to-peer lending. And at first, let's just say I was not entirely thrilled because I kind of pictured it as just lending money to whoever you met on the street, and that was just one step away from making an ad on Craigslist and getting stabbed doing so, so I was not entirely sold on the concept. But as I researched a bit more, I found out about different platforms on which lenders and borrowers were matched, and that seemed a whole lot safer and just also a bit more simple in general. So I started looking around for what was available for people in Canada, and I found about one platform which was called Lending Loop. And it did exactly that. It was a platform on which you could go as an investor and lend your money to different people who needed to get a loan. Now what you need to understand is that the people getting a loan from Lending Loop don't necessarily fit in the regular banking system, because if they did, they could just go to the bank, get a loan, and probably have a better interest rate. Now there are many reasons why these people might not fit in the regular banking system, because banks usually require you to have a stable income, maybe some asset to use as collateral, so I can totally understand that some people just don't fit this description. So overall, I was pretty comfortable just lending this money to whoever, considering that they had a decent reason to borrow this money in the first place. So looking at the data that they made available, I quickly computed that I could be making around 20% before all the fees, which would leave me with, let's say, roughly 15% net, and I was totally fine with that because it is a whole lot better than what I would be making on the S&P 500, for example. So I started registering on this website, and everything was going well until eventually I hit a wall. Now, in case you have not figured it out by now, I live in the French-speaking part of Canada, which explains why I have such a weird English that is kind of broken and sometimes I miss words. It's just that I'm not that good, and in my everyday life, I speak French. But what this also means is that we have a whole different set of rules and regulations, and many services are not available to the citizens of Quebec. And of course, Lending Loop was one of those. So looking on their website, they said that they would eventually become available to the people in Quebec, so I subscribed to their newsletter and decided to wait this one out. So weeks went by and months went by and still no news, so I decided to make a second screen on the internet and see if anything had become available to us people in Quebec. And I stumbled upon GoPeer. GoPeer was essentially the exact same thing, where you could go on there, lend your money to different people who needed to make a loan, and you could get a decent interest return in exchange. I caught this project right at the beginning. It had not yet gone live, so I had some time to do a bit of research and come up with a game plan. So looking at their documentation, I kind of came to the same conclusion that I could be making between 15 and 20% return, and then there would probably be a few fees subtracted from that. So all in all, that was still a whole lot better than the S&P 500. So I was excited. So all in all, it took a few weeks to make my registration on the website, transfer my initial deposit of $1,000, and be able to start picking loans. Now the way that this works is you can just go on their website and give it a few parameters. There are settings that you can choose from to let the website do the investing for you. So what that does is it lets the platform pick different loans that match your risk settings, and it will invest in those, and automatically, as soon as you have money available, reinvest that money into new loans. Now, I really wanted the full experience, so I decided to turn that off and start hand-picking each and every loan. The minimum investment per loan is $10. I had $1,000 to invest, so that would be 100 loans to manually pick. Now for each loan, you get a certain amount of detail, like what's the assessed risk level, what is the loan going to be used for, and also how much interest it is that you're going to make on it. So overall, it really is a matter of maybe 1 minute to pick a loan and just invest in it. But since I was at the very beginning of the platform, there were not that many loans to choose from, so I did the first round of choosing different loans, and I managed to invest a few $100s, and I had to give it a few more days before logging back in and choosing some more loans, and then giving it a few more days, and then coming back again, choosing a few more. And I did the whole circus a few times, but eventually realized that this was super tedious and it would take me forever, and it was more time than what I wanted to invest in this. So I just turned on the auto investing feature and just decided to give it a few days or a few weeks, and that's just what I did. So when I came back after this period, the platform had managed to invest $900 over my $1,000, and I decided that I was happy with it, so I would just roll with that. I turned the auto investing feature back off because I didn't want it to just compound into new loans and lock my money forever, because I really saw this as sort of a test run and proof of concept. And if it did work for a year, well, maybe I could review my strategy and invest $10,000 or maybe $20,000. And over time, if I was able to make a decent return on this, I mean, it could really compound into something much bigger. So essentially, I just let it do its thing for 12 full months. I didn't really log back into their platform, and recently, for tax purposes, I decided to go back and see how well I had done. The first thing that I noticed is that the platform had been updated and there were new tools available to investors. And the first one of these tools is a nice dashboard, and this dashboard gives you very valuable information, which I would have loved to have in the first place when I was picking my loans, but obviously the data was not available at that time. So you get to see what each level of risk is going to pay in terms of interest, and you can also see what is the default rate for each one of these risk levels. That would really have helped me kind of maybe make a few simulations as to how much money I'm going to make, how much is going to default, and really just make maybe a more sensible plan. Now, one data point which really caught my eye was the use of the loans made on GoPeer. And what that said is that they were over 50% of all the loans made on GoPeer, which were used to do a debt consolidation, which means that people were pulling on one larger debt to pay many small ones which had a higher interest rate, most likely credit card debt. And honestly, that was a bit of an issue for me in terms of ethics, because when I'm playing games on the internet, stuff like getting involved into Ponzi's, in the crypto space, I assume that the people I'm playing with understand that this is a game. It is so complicated to get your money online, buy crypto, find out about these projects, that I can only assume that the people who are getting involved understand that this is a Ponzi game and there will be winners and there will be losers. And I'm totally fine playing this game with people who understand what it is that they're playing. But when I'm lending money to people who have little financial literacy, I mean, that is sort of an issue for me, because it feels like I'm taking advantage of people who are not fully aware of what game it is that they're playing. Now, I'm not passing a judgment on the people using these platforms to borrow money, but it just got me thinking, for myself as to what I was comfortable or not doing with my money. Now, after having looked at this data, I headed to my personal dashboard, which gave me metrics about how well I had done throughout the year. And the first piece of data that I saw is that the platform told me I had made 16% return over the year. And honestly, I was pretty thrilled because that meant I had done pretty good. But as I continued scrolling down, something did not quite add up, because I had invested $1,000, and when I was looking at my available balance, which was just cash money waiting in my account, I was right around $500, which was totally fine. It meant that people had been repaying me and they had been paying me interest, so that was totally good. But then I looked at the amount of money I had lent, and it was right around $550 in repayment. So, I mean, quick math, 550 plus 500, that makes around 1,050, which is only 5% over what I had initially invested. Now, of course, there was only 900 of that money which was actually working, but still it meant that my money, which had been lent, had only netted me around 6%. So to understand this a little bit better, I continued looking at my dashboard, and I eventually stumbled upon the bad debt section. And what I realized is that I had over $100 which had been written off as bad debt, or which was currently trying to be recovered. So even though I had made over $150 in interest, most of this had been offset by people who had decided to just run away with my money. And this kind of makes sense because I had picked a fairly high risk profile because I wanted the best return, and this platform doesn't have collateral. It doesn't take any form of collateral from the people who are borrowing the money. So it only makes sense that some people see this as an opportunity to just run away with the money. So I was a bit bummed about that because I was expecting a much higher return, but still I was happy that not all of my money was gone and that I had managed to turn in a small profit over that. Now, I took a step back and considered the ethical kind of dilemma that I had, and also the return which I had made and the amount of energy I had invested in this project, and I decided that this was probably not for me. So what I do is I withdrew the money I had available at that time, which was a little bit over $500, and for the rest I have to wait until the loans are fully repaid to be able to get my money back. Now, since all of the loans have different starting dates and different durations, I will be able to get some of my money back this year, some next year, and I should have my full balance available by the end of 2025. So is peer-to-peer investing definitely off the list for me from now on? I would not say that it is definitely off the list because there are still other platforms which I quite like Anchor, which rewards you with some money from loans that had been made, but the difference being that you don't have to pick each and every loan individually. It's just like a big pool and you get a portion of the interest generated. That seems a whole lot more simple, and even if the platforms take a bigger chunk of the profit generated, the fact that you have more diversity because you're lending to more people in the end, I mean, it might be worth it to just go for something like that. So overall, I'm not unhappy with the way that things turned out. I didn't make a whole lot of money, but I didn't lose any either, so I'm happy with that. I will continue looking at alternative ways of investing my money. And talking about that, let me know what kind of projects it is that you're looking at. As always, this is not financial advice. This is just my own personal adventure with money, with trying to build passive income and trying to find about interesting things to do with my money. And if you've made it this far, please consider liking this video and subscribing to the channel. I always dive into different projects like this. So thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one.